Hold the tray steady, Maya. Nobody wants to see your shaking hands ruin Victoria's big night. My mother pressed her manicured nails into my wrist hard enough to leave crescent marks, then shoved a silver platter of champagne flutes into my arms, and smile. You look like you're attending a funeral. She smoothed the front of her ivory Chanel jacket and turned back toward the ballroom without waiting for my response. 63 guests were gathered in the rooftop event space of the Langford Grand, my family's flagship hotel in downtown Charleston. Crystal chandeliers, live jazz quartet, shrimp cocktail towers that cost more per tier than my monthly grocery budget. All of it staged for one purpose: to celebrate my older sister Victoria's promotion to CEO of Langford Hospitality Group, the boutique hotel empire our grandmother built from a single bed and breakfast in 1971. I was not on the guest list. I was on the catering staff, and in exactly 11 minutes, the woman they hired to pass appetizers was going to dismantle everything in this room. I moved through the crowd with the practiced invisibility of someone who had been overlooked her entire life. Smile. Tilt the tray. Don't speak unless spoken to. I had been trained for this role since childhood, just not by any hospitality school. By my own family. To my mother, Catherine Langford, daughters were not individuals. They were instruments. Victoria was the Stradivarius. She was displayed, polished, and played at every important occasion. I was the triangle in the back of the orchestra, occasionally useful, mostly forgotten, sometimes mocked for existing at all. The investment had always been one-directional. Victoria got the Wharton MBA, funded entirely by Grandma Lillian's trust. Victoria got the corner office at 26, while employees with 30 years of experience trained her. Victoria got the company credit card with no spending limit, the penthouse suite on the 14th floor, and the unconditional belief of our mother that she was destined to lead. And me? I got a handshake and a bus ticket. When I asked about college funding, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table and explained it like I was slow. The trust has a finite allocation for education, Maya. Your sister's program at Wharton is an investment in the company's future. You understand that, don't you? You're the practical one. You'll figure it out. I figured it out. I took a Greyhound to Raleigh, waitress nights at a diner off Capitol Boulevard, and studied forensic accounting at NC State on a needs-based scholarship. I graduated summa cum laude. I passed the CPA exam on my first attempt. I earned my certified fraud examiner credential by 25. When I called home to share the news, my mother put me on speakerphone so Victoria could hear. Victoria laughed and asked if I was going to audit parking meters. My mother laughed too. That was the last time I called home voluntarily. For the past 6 years, I'd built something quietly, not a hotel empire, something sharper. I specialized in distressed commercial debt. When luxury businesses overextend, when their debt becomes toxic and their balance sheets start bleeding, my firm steps in. We acquire the debt at steep discounts, and then we either restructure the business or we liquidate the assets. I was not famous. I was not flashy. But in certain circles, when a resort group in Hilton Head collapsed last year, owing $42 million, or when a boutique chain in Savannah defaulted on its construction loans, my name was the one whispered in the conference rooms. Maya Langford, the quiet one. 3 months ago, my algorithm flagged something that made my stomach drop. Langford Hospitality Group was hemorrhaging cash, not slowly, catastrophically. Victoria had spent the last 2 years on an aggressive expansion plan, 4 new properties in Nashville, Asheville, Savannah, and Key West. She had financed the entire expansion with variable rate commercial loans totaling $38 million. When interest rates spiked, the debt service tripled. The Nashville property was 6 months behind on construction. The Savannah Hotel had failed its 3rd building inspection. The Key West project existed only on paper, and in the renderings Victoria showed investors at cocktail parties. But here is what made my blood run cold. To cover the shortfall, Victoria had done something breathtakingly reckless. She had pledged the Langford Grand itself, the original hotel, our grandmother's hotel, as cross-collateral for all 4 loans. If any single property defaulted, the lender could seize the entire portfolio, including the Charleston flagship, the crown jewel, the only property that actually made money. She had bet Grandma Lillian's life's work on 4 bad hands simultaneously, and she was losing all of them. When I first discovered this, I sat in my office for an hour staring at the screen. My initial instinct was to call my mother, to warn her, to say, "Mom, Victoria is about to lose everything Grandma built. You need to intervene right now." But then I remembered Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I remembered arriving at the restaurant and finding no chair set for me. I remembered Victoria saying, "Oh, I thought you had other plans." I remembered my mother not correcting her. I remembered eating a turkey sandwich alone in my rental car in the parking lot, watching through the window as my family laughed without me. So, I did not call my mother. I called my attorney. Within 72 hours, through a holding company called Bellevue Capital Partners, I purchased the entire distressed loan portfolio from First Southeast Commercial Bank. The bank was thrilled. They had been trying to offload Langford's toxic debt for months. I acquired $38 million in obligations for 11 cents on the dollar. I did not just own the debt, I owned the leverage. Every property, every asset, every square inch of marble and mahogany in the Langford Empire was now secured by paper that had my signature on the back of it. And tonight, while my sister raised a glass of Dom Perignon to celebrate her coronation as CEO, the woman holding the tray was the woman holding the mortgage. I circulated through the ballroom. Victoria was standing near the stage, radiant in a midnight blue gown, her husband Daniel at her side. Daniel was a real estate developer. Charming, tall, excellent at spending other people's money. He had been the architect of the expansion plan, the one who convinced Victoria that bigger was always better, that leverage was just another word for ambition. They made a beautiful couple. They were also co-guarantors on every single loan, which meant they were both personally liable for the full amount in the event of default. My mother stood nearby, holding court with a circle of Charleston society wives. She was telling them about Victoria's vision for the brand. She used the word visionary 4 times in 2 minutes. I counted. She caught my eye as I passed and snapped her fingers without breaking her sentence. Maya, Senator Caldwell's glass is empty. And stand up straight. You're representing the family, even if it's just with a tray. I refilled the senator's glass and retreated to the service corridor. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. A text from my operations director, James Whitfield. James was ex-FBI financial crimes. I had hired him away from a white shoe consulting firm 2 years ago. He was efficient, discreet, and deeply uncomfortable at parties. Tonight, he was sitting in a black sedan in the parking garage below the hotel, monitoring a live feed from the ballroom's AV system. His text read, "Presentation deck is loaded on the main screen. Standing by." I replied, "Wait for my signal." Victoria's big moment was approaching. She had prepared a PowerPoint presentation for the investors and board members in attendance, a dazzling showcase of the expansion's progress, renderings of the new properties, occupancy projections, revenue forecasts. I had seen a draft of the deck 2 weeks ago, obtained through channels that Victoria would never suspect. The numbers in her presentation were fiction. She was projecting 82% occupancy for a Nashville hotel that did not have functioning plumbing. She was showing 36% year-over-year revenue growth when the actual financials showed a 19% decline. She was presenting fabricated construction progress photos for Savannah that I had traced to a stock photo website based in Prague. She was not just lying to her family. She was lying to investors with federally regulated securities exposure. And in approximately 9 minutes, she was going to present those lies on a giant screen in front of 63 witnesses, permanently converting her incompetence into securities fraud. I did not need to push her. I just needed to let her fall. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the small stage at the front of the ballroom. My mother clinked her glass, and the room fell quiet. "Tonight is not just a celebration," Catherine said, her voice warm with rehearsed emotion. "Tonight is a passing of the torch. When my mother, Lillian Langford, opened her first bed and breakfast in 1971 with nothing but a second mortgage and a recipe for buttermilk biscuits, she could never have imagined this." She paused, gesturing at the opulent room, but she would have recognized the spirit, the fire. And that fire burns brightest in my daughter Victoria. Applause. Victoria stepped onto the stage, glowing. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you all. I want to show you where Langford hospitality is headed. This isn't just an expansion. This is a revolution." She clicked the remote. The first slide appeared on the massive screen behind her. Langford Hospitality Group. The next chapter. She moved through the slides with practiced confidence. The Nashville property. The Asheville boutique concept. The Savannah restoration. The Key West beachfront. Each slide was more polished than the last. Each number was more fraudulent than the one before it. I stood in the back of the room, still holding my tray, and I watched every face in the audience. I watched the investors nod. I watched Daniel beam from the front row. I watched my mother dab the corner of her eye with a handkerchief. And then Victoria arrived at the financial summary slide, the one that showed a consolidated revenue projection of $94 million by 2028, the one that showed a debt-to-equity ratio of 0.75 when the actual ratio was 4.2, the one that was about to be displayed next to the real numbers. I set down my tray. I pulled out my phone. I texted James one word, "Now." 3 seconds later, the screen flickered. Victoria frowned and tapped her remote. The screen flickered again, and then it split. On the left side, Victoria's polished presentation remained. On the right side, a new column appeared. At the top, in clean black font, it read, Actual figures. Source, First Southeast Commercial Bank loan file, acquired by Bellevue Capital Partners. The room did not understand at first. Victoria stared at the screen, frozen mid-gesture. Then the numbers began to register. Her projected revenue, $94 million. Actual trailing revenue, $12.8 million. Her projected occupancy, 82%. Actual occupancy across operating properties, 31%. Her stated construction completion for Nashville, 78%. Actual completion. Foundation and framing only. No electrical, no plumbing. Work halted due to contractor liens. The room began to murmur. Victoria clicked her remote frantically, trying to advance past the slide. The screen did not respond. It was no longer connected to her laptop. It was connected to mine. I walked forward. I did not rush. I did not raise my voice. I moved through the crowd the way I had moved through the crowd all evening, quietly, precisely, like someone who had been invisible her whole life and had learned to use it. What is this? Victoria's voice cracked. Who is doing this? Mom, someone hacked the system. I reached the front of the room and stepped onto the stage beside her. Victoria looked at me like I had grown a second head. Maya? What are you doing? Get off the stage. You're embarrassing yourself. I took the microphone from the stand. My name is Maya Langford. I am the managing partner of Bellevue Capital Partners. 3 weeks ago, my firm acquired the entire commercial loan portfolio currently secured by Langford Hospitality Group's assets. Dead silence. I own every dollar of debt attached to this company. I own the lien on the Langford Grand. I own the construction loans for Nashville, Savannah, Asheville, and Key West. And I am here tonight because the presentation you just watched contained material misrepresentations made in the presence of investors with fiduciary exposure. Victoria grabbed my arm. You're insane. You don't own anything. You're a waitress. I gently removed her hand. I tapped my phone. The screen changed to a document. Bellevue Capital Partners, LLC, Debt Purchase Agreement. Executed and recorded with the Charleston County Register of Deeds. My name, my signature, my company. Daniel stood up from the front row. This is a joke. We bank with First Southeast. They would have told us about a transfer. I looked at him. They tried. Your CFO received 3 certified letters over the past month. She forwarded them to Victoria. I turned to my sister. You told her to ignore them, didn't you? You told her it was a clerical error. Victoria's face went white. I advanced to the next slide. This one showed the original construction progress photos from Victoria's presentation side by side with the stock photos I had traced to the Czech website. Identical images. Same angles, same lighting, same building. Except the originals had a watermark from a company called Prague Photo that Victoria's team had cropped out. Poorly. The edge of the watermark was still visible in the lower left corner if you zoomed in. I had zoomed in. These are not your buildings, I said. These are licensed stock photographs presented as construction progress to investors in a federally regulated hospitality fund. Under 18 U.S.C. Section 1348, this constitutes securities fraud. The statutory maximum is 25 years. My mother pushed through the crowd, her face a mask of controlled fury. Stop this right now, Maya. I don't know what kind of tantrum this is, but you will not humiliate your sister in front of our guests. You were always jealous, always resentful. This is exactly why we never trusted you with anything important. I looked at my mother for a long time. The room was watching. I could feel 63 pairs of eyes on me, and for the first time in my life, not a single one of them was looking through me. Mom, I said quietly, the flagship hotel you're standing in right now is collateral for $38 million in defaulted loans. Loans that Victoria took out. Loans that she cross-collateralized without telling the board. If I enforce the default clause in the debt agreement, I can file for foreclosure on this property by Monday morning. Catherine's hand went to her throat. That's not possible. This hotel is owned free and clear. Lillian paid off the mortgage in 1994. It was owned free and clear, I said, until Victoria pledged it as cross-collateral 18 months ago. I turned back to the screen and displayed the deed of trust, with Victoria's signature, right there. Notarized. Recorded. The Langford Grand has been leveraged for over a year, and you didn't know because nobody in this family ever reads the paperwork. You just trust the golden child. Victoria was shaking. Her composure, That polished, Wharton-educated, champagne and confidence composure was crumbling in real time. She looked at Daniel. Daniel was already on his phone, texting furiously, probably his attorney. He had stopped making eye contact with anyone. I stepped to the center of the stage. I kept my voice even. This was not a moment for shouting. This was a moment for clarity. Here is what happens next, I said. I am the senior secured creditor of Langford Hospitality Group. The company is in material default on all 4 expansion loans. I have the legal right to accelerate the entire debt, call it due immediately, and initiate foreclosure proceedings on every property in the portfolio, including this one. I paused. But I am not going to do that tonight. A murmur rippled through the room. I am offering 2 options. Option A, I file a formal complaint with the SEC and refer the fraudulent investor presentation to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Victoria and Daniel face federal securities fraud charges. The properties are seized. The hotel is auctioned. Everyone in this room who invested based on tonight's presentation is advised to retain counsel. Victoria made a sound. Not a word. A sound, like air leaving a tire. Option B. Victoria and Daniel resign from Langford Hospitality Group effective immediately. They sign a consent decree, transferring operational control to a restructuring team appointed by my firm. The Langford Grand stays open. The staff keeps their jobs. I personally guarantee the property taxes and operating costs during the transition. No federal referral, no prosecution, no auction. I looked at my mother. The hotel survives. Grandma Lillian's legacy survives. But Victoria does not run it anymore. Catherine was gripping the back of a chair. Her knuckles were white. Her eyes moved from me to Victoria to Daniel and back to me. For the first time in my life, I watched my mother perform a calculation that did not have Victoria's name in the favorable column. You can't prove any of this, Daniel said from the front row, but his voice had lost its confidence. His phone was still in his hand. His attorney had not texted back. I reached into the pocket of my catering apron and pulled out a USB drive. This contains the original loan documents, the recorded deed of trust, the stock photo licensing records, screen captures of the metadata from Victoria's presentation file showing the images were downloaded from progphoto.com 6 days ago, and a forensic comparison of the financial projections in tonight's deck versus the actual bank statements filed with First Southeast. I held it up. I also have a copy in my attorney's safe, and another copy on a secure server that my operations director will transmit to the SEC if I do not confirm resolution by midnight. I checked my watch. It was 9:47. You have 2 hours and 13 minutes. Victoria looked at our mother. Mom, say something. Make her stop. Catherine Langford stared at the screen. The real numbers, the stock photos, the deed of trust with her daughter's signature. She stared at it all for a very long time. Then she turned to Victoria, and for the first time, she did not see a Stradivarius. She saw the bill. Sign it, Catherine said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Mom! Victoria's voice broke. She's bluffing. She's always been jealous of me. She's been planning this because she's bitter and small and— Sign it, Victoria! Catherine's voice was iron now. You risked your grandmother's hotel. You lied to investors. In front of the senator. She closed her eyes. Sign the paper and pray your sister is more merciful than you deserve. The room was silent except for the jazz quartet, which had stopped playing 3 minutes ago and was now standing by the bar, watching like everyone else. Daniel signed first. His hand was steady. He was a man accustomed to cutting losses. He did not look at Victoria when he set the pen down. Victoria signed second. Her hand was not steady. A tear hit the consent decree, smudging the ink slightly near the notary line. It did not affect the legality. I collected both documents, slid them into a manila envelope, and placed the envelope in my bag. Then I turned to my mother. You can stay in the penthouse suite for as long as you need. I'll have the restructuring team set up on the 3rd floor starting Monday. The staff will not be affected. Catherine looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. She was not crying from emotion. She was crying from the mathematics of it all, the decades of miscalculation, the compounding interest of choosing the wrong daughter. I started to walk away. Then I stopped. I turned back to my mother. 6 years ago, I said, I called you to tell you I earned my fraud examiner certification. Victoria asked if I was going to audit parking meters. You laughed. Catherine said nothing. I pulled off my catering apron, folded it neatly, and set it on the nearest table. Turns out, I said, I audit a little more than parking meters. I walked through the ballroom. The crowd parted. Nobody stopped me. Nobody snapped their fingers. Nobody asked me to refill a glass. At the door, I passed the tray of champagne I had been carrying all evening. I picked up a glass, took one sip, and set it back down. The elevator doors opened. James was waiting inside, holding my briefcase and a printed confirmation from the Charleston County Clerk's office. The consent decree had been pre-filed pending signature. It was now active. "Both signed?" he asked. "Both signed." He handed me my coat. I put it on over my catering uniform. We rode down 14 floors in silence. In the parking garage, the sedan was still running. I sat in the back seat and looked out the window at the building above me, the Langford Grand, my grandmother's hotel, the place where I had been invisible for 32 years, the place that now, legally and irrevocably, answered to me. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. 4 words. "Why didn't you warn us?" I typed back. "Nobody warned me either." I put the phone in my pocket. James pulled the sedan out of the garage and onto Meeting Street. The Charleston night was warm and heavy with jasmine. I rolled down the window. 6 months later, the Langford Grand was profitable again. I had closed the Nashville and Key West projects, negotiated a structured sale of the Asheville property, and personally supervised the completion of the Savannah renovation, which opened on time and under budget. I kept every single employee. I renamed the parent company Lillian Hospitality Group after my grandmother. Victoria and Daniel divorced. Daniel moved to Atlanta. Victoria took a job at a regional hotel chain in Columbia, working in middle management. My mother still lived in the penthouse. She had not apologized. I had not asked her to. Some debts cannot be restructured. They can only be written off. On a Tuesday morning in October, I was sitting in my grandmother's old office on the 2nd floor of the Langford Grand, the same office where Lillian Langford had balanced her first checkbook in 1971. The walls still had her original wallpaper. I had not changed it. On my desk was a framed photograph of my grandmother holding a plate of buttermilk biscuits, standing in front of a hand-painted sign that read Langford Bed and Breakfast, rooms $12 per night. She was smiling. She looked like a woman who had bet on herself and won. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. The first one in 5 months. It said, "I know you won't believe me, but I'm sorry. Not for losing the company. For the parking meters comment. I think about it every day." I read it twice. Then I set the phone down on Grandma Lillian's desk and went back to work. I did not reply. But I did not delete it either. Some things need to sit in the inbox for a while, collecting interest, waiting to see if the principle is real. If you found this story satisfying, remember this. The most dangerous person in any room is not the loudest one. It's the one they forgot to count. Like and subscribe to Karma's Twist for more stories about the people who were never supposed to win, but did.